Hello and welcome to today's video. So this time we're going to be having a look through all the Blue Peter books that were published right back from the early 60s right up to when the run finished 40 books later. And plus I got a couple of little spin-offs as well to go through. So that will be the subject of today's video, the complete Blue Peter book. So sit back, relax, and let's get to it. Right then, so here we are with the very first Blue Peter annual, for which I do actually have a couple of copies of. This is my better condition one, and this is the only annual out of the entire run that might cause you a bit of issue getting, because it is quite scarce, it seems, and a little bit pricier than the rest of them. Absolutely mint copies. You're going to pay the best part of £50 for one of these, even today. But I've got a couple of copies. This one I actually found at a jumble sale or something, so it cost me like 20p, and I picked it up just almost as to have a reader. But the main thing, and this is on my good one, is the spine is very, very delicate on this particular book for some reason. So when you do find them, the spines are usually hammered. So neither of these are any good, but they're better than some out there, should we put it that way. So this one was dated was published in 1964 by Lutterworth, and it set the trend really for what all the Blue Peter books, and I do say the Blue Peter books and not the Blue Peter annuals, but the Blue Peter books that were published for many, many years to come. It showed the presenters of the day, so in this case Christopher Trace and Valerie Singleton. And it took the best of what had happened during the year on the programme and mixed it in with some non-fiction articles. Absolutely fantastic, and well, they're just so good. They had other little additional stories as well, and we'll see some of those as we go along. They usually had a crossword or a puzzle, something like that, to keep the kids entertained. And this is here, Oliver Postgate. You might recognise the name there, Little Hiawatha. Oliver Postgate, of course, was famous for creating the clangers a few years after this, along with Bagpuss and Ivor the Engine and many others. This is Bleep and Booster. So these guys were a mainstay of the Blue Peter book for many, many years, Bleep and Booster. They, in fact, also had their own annuals, although I've not got those. But my friend George has promised me that we can borrow his. So he has all the Bleep and Booster books. So we'll have a look at those in due course. Bit on the behind the scenes there, a making of Blue Peter. There's a photo there where the Hollies were guesting, the pop group the Hollies were guesting on that episode of Blue Peter. And this is an absolute blueprint for how the books would be going forward. Fantastic. Really, really good. Yep, so Chris, Valerie and Petra was the first ever Alsatian and the first ever Blue Peter pet. So as I said, 9 and 6, which was a fair bit of money back then, but you got a lot of book for your money. As I said, I've got that one, and I've got this one as well, which is it's the same book, but it's got other pages which aren't quite as damaged. So if I could be inclined, I'd take the best of both and try and make one really decent one, but that's perhaps something for another day. So as I said, that's the only one that's probably going to cause you any sort of issue if you're trying to put a set of these together. All the rest of them I found have been dead easy to get and cheap, literally like £1 or £2. I suppose numbers 2 and 3, if you wanted them in absolutely top condition, this one perhaps would set you back maybe a tenner, maybe £10, but no more than that. And that's for a really, really nice one. It's the same team up. They've added now Fred the tortoise, and is it Jason the cat? And this is similar sort of format, again, competition, stuff that you can make. I think this was the last book which had just the 2 presenters on. Picture puzzle there, crossword. As I said, I've not gone out of my way to get mint ones or anything like that. I'm just happy to have a set more than anything else, There's the Bleep and Booster, which I remember when I was growing up, I think the first Blue Peter annual I got actually as a kid given to me. It was like number 6 or 7, I seem to recall. And I had it for many years after that. When years later, when I went to try and get a set of these, I picked up virtually the whole lot off in a job lot off eBay for 20 quid, but missing maybe 2 or 3. Literally, that's how cheap they actually are. So don't pay a lot for these because it's just not worth it. Let me just put those over there, so we've got a bit more room to look through. This one, which is number 3. So John Noakes has joined the team now. 10 shillings this one. There's 50p. So Christopher Trace, Valerie Singleton, John Noakes, Petra, Patch and Jason. There we are. So that's the full team. And occasionally they'd actually have some really interesting articles in this book. And this was, you know, it's almost like a time capsule. These are so old now that, you know, it's like from another era, isn't it? It really, really is. Kids today wouldn't have the attention to do any of this, but back then they did. And Blue Peter was a massive, massive show for the BBC. Absolutely massive. So any of these, then from number 4 onwards, you know, don't expect to pay about 50p to £1 each. They're dead common. I just haven't got around to upgrading some of mine. They're in pretty ropey condition, but I don't care because, you know, as I said, I'm just happy to have them in my collection. As I said, I grew up loving Blue Peter, and it's certainly part of my childhood. And I was more than happy to try and put a set of these together, and it wasn't very difficult at all. In all honesty, I probably could have stopped at number 20, but, you know, being the completist that I am, I decided to go for the whole lot because they are so easy to get hold of. Obviously, as a Doctor Who fan, Doctor Who was always being featured on Blue Peter. So for that reason alone, I would watch Blue Peter every week. Well, it was twice weekly. Introduction of, speaking of Doctor Who, Peter Purvis there. Obviously, he would come off his run with William Hartnell as Stephen and was free to be a presenter. So he joined the team as Christopher Trace retired. This one is got a date there, 1968, when this one came out. And it was a pretty consistent run right up until about 6 or 7 issues from the end, when they had a gap of a few years and the Blue Peter book came back. But they did publish a book every year, and although, you know, they were always marketed with the annuals, they never called it an annual for some weird reason. It was always called the Blue Peter book. They did actually release some other memorabilia. There was a series of jigsaws, and there was a whole series of paperbacks, and I've not got around to getting any of those yet, but they're not difficult to get, but they'd probably be quite difficult to get in nice condition. And that's like the Blue Peter Special Assignment, where they went away on holiday in another country for a few weeks rather. So there's 3 or 4 books in the Special Assignment series, I believe. There's also, there was like how to make series. There was Blue Peter Book of Puzzles. There's all sorts, wasn't there? This is quite nice. So this is the crew in a mini moke outside Television Centre, which is obviously where Blue Peter was filmed in BP1. And this says here, interesting, Biddy Baxter, Edward Barnes and Rosemary Gill devised and wrote this Blue Peter book. This one's got, I think this double page spread is fantastic because you've got John Noakes there behind an amazing BBC studio camera there, and then the 2 Peter Purvis and Valerie Singleton there. Absolutely fantastic, that one. Really like that photo. In fact, there's a better view of it without any publishing on, any writing on. And it says, interestingly, this is published by the BBC. Published by, so it wasn't, a lot of the annuals of this period were published by world distributors. But this particular one was published by the BBC. Look at this. Are you a collector? What are they collecting? Watches, shells. What's that? Little ornaments. Yeah, not the stuff we collect. We like to collect Star Wars figures and Doctor Who Blu-rays and vintage paperbacks. What's that? Oh, Derek Ware. He was the stunt guy. Interesting stuff. Bleep and Booster again. All good stuff. So that was book number 6. Book number 7. This is another great one. I remember I didn't get this one at the time, but I remember owning it. Someone must have given it to me or something like that as a present. As I said, these really weren't difficult to get hold of, and you could get them at any jumble sale. They must have sold loads. That's all I can think of. Added the Paddington story in as well. Still, I remember that. Actually, I remember that photo very well. So I definitely had this one as a kid, because now that I've seen that, I remember it. Yeah, and I mainly remember picking up the Blue Peter annuals specifically to read the Bleep and Booster stories. That was more than that was my main highlight. This is quite nice. This has got a little explorer's kit that you could make for your action man, which is pretty cool. So there, I managed to squeeze an action figure related item into this. The world's heaviest man. I remember this. Yeah, I definitely owned this one as a kid, because I can remember some of these pictures. Also John Noakes being turned into Henry VIII there. I remember that very well. Excellent stuff. So that was book number 7, and they're numbered on the spine, which is quite nice as well. In fact, I think they number them all the way through, which is cool. So this is book number 8. Peter Purvis and John Noakes on the front. I'm sure Valerie Singleton is still connected with the show at this point. How many people can you fit in a mini? Do you remember that? Yeah, there's Valerie Singleton. So let me know in the comments below, did you grow up with Blue Peter annuals like I did, and like thousands and thousands of other kids did in Britain? Book number 9 here. Absolutely classic. So such a great presenter, John Noakes. Very sad when he passed away a couple of years back. So this is an expansion of the presenting team again, and this is the first year to feature Leslie Judd. She's now joined the team of presenters. I remember Leslie Judd very well, and she was a mainstay on Blue Peter for a long, long time. This was her earliest ones here. There she is. I'm not sure why they brought on the 4th presenter. Maybe the show was so popular, they just needed to send them off to do interesting footage here, there, and everywhere. So that was book number 9. Bit of a ropey old copy of that, but I don't care. There they all are on the front cover of book number 10. Once again, the book being written by the presenters. This is dated 1973 now. The mystery picture seems to have been filled in on almost every single one of my copies. But as I said, I don't mind. Pancake Party. Yeah, I pretty much had all of these through the 70s, I think, in one way or another. Either bought for me at Christmas, or I was given them by friends, or or I just found them at boot sales. I thought, oh, that's one I haven't got. Or jumble sales back then, of course. So I pick it up. This is book number 11. There's that looks like John Pertwee there in the Whomobile, and obviously this was the year that he was on Blue Peter. He turned up in the Whomobile. Quite a memorable one. I think that was for Invasion of the Dinosaurs, as I recall. But yeah, did you ever have a Blue Peter annual when you were growing up? It's a shame they don't do the annual anymore, or the book anymore, but the the show is still going, and was easily one of the most popular children's shows of its time. So that's number 11. Number 12 here, very colourful cover here. Slight change in the printing. This one's got sort of a matte finish on it. Designed by Eileen and John Strange. There we are. So maybe a different designing team on this book, reflecting the mid-70s. It very much reeks of the mid-70s, doesn't it? The style of it. But a real good mix of fun and education, I think, was the key with Blue Peter. And it was a very successful format that went for many, many years. A lot of its success was down to producer Biddy Baxter and one of the unsung heroes, Alex Legar, who we'll get to later on. He was like one of the assistant producers or executive producers for a long, long time on the show. So this is book number 13 now. Unlucky for some. So as you can see, the format hardly changes at all. It's the best of what happened that year on screen, with a mixture of some puzzles, games, and non-fiction articles, and you know, like a Paddington strip, the Bleep and Booster. It's the same sort of thing year after year, and it was a format that worked. Introduction to Jack and Jill, I remember those, the cats. Blue Peter on the Generation game there, Bruce Forsyth. Number 13. Number 14, another interesting like behind the scenes picture there of the guys. There they are outside BBC TV Centre, and this is one of those classic children's programmes that was all filmed at the BBC. Great stuff, isn't it? Well, there's a bit behind the scenes of Multicoloured Swap Shop, which had started by now. I suppose we're on to about 76, 77, around that sort of time now. Certainly I was watching the show religiously by now. Every single week I would not miss an episode. That's number 14. 15, I remember this when they came out. And we will need to speed through these a bit more, but you get the idea. It's almost a replica of the previous books. Number 15. So this is number 16, the first introduction of a new presenter for many years, and that's obviously Simon Groom with a Goldie. Very much part of the programme for a long, long time. And also, what was his name again? I can't remember his name now. This is the new team. I used to watch these. I can't remember his name, you know. There's Goldie as a puppy. But let's soldier on. This is dated 1979, this one. I believe that was that Janet Ellis at the end there? I think so. Leslie Judd talks to Tina Heath in the dressing room for Lizzie Dripping. I remember that. Oh, well, no doubt it will all become clear. A lot of the modern presenters, I got no idea of their names because I never watched the show back then. But it is what it is. So Leslie Judd is gone. So you got Simon Groom, Tina Heath, Chris. And at the very end of the year, you had Sarah Green join the show, I think. I think it was Sarah Green. Anyway. There we are. What is this guy's name? I can't remember. Anyway, it's okay. That was number 17. Number 18 here. Just Sarah Green on the front. This was probably about the last one I remember getting originally, first time round. Number 18, there's a little Doctor Who spread there. Blue Peter, always a big supporter of Doctor Who. Got Simon Groom, Sarah Green and Peter Duncan now. As Peter Duncan has joined the Blue Peter team. Number 19, same lineup. Jack, Jill, Sarah Green, Peter Duncan as Simon Groom. All pretty good stuff. That was number 19, and amazingly, this is number 20, and we're only halfway. So, and there we are, look, for the 20th anniversary, they had all the old annuals on the inside cover there. And there's the rest of them on the back cover, which is pretty cool, isn't it? Celebrating the 20th anniversary of the show, of the book even. Maybe not, the show's going even longer, but the Daleks invaded the studio one day. Some of the classic scenes anyway. It's with that was it, yeah, I remember this. Valerie, Singleton and Princess Anne filming there. Interesting stuff. So that's book 20. So what we're going to do now, because there's so many more, I'm not going to go through each one. I'm just going to show you them all one by one. So this is book 21, 22, 23, 24, book 25, 26, 27. Now these ones here, you'll notice that the size of the annual dramatically increases. This is the 30th anniversary of Blue Peter the show with book number 28. Let's give it a little bit more room there. There we are. 29. 30. 31. 32. 33. Big heavy one, number 34. 35. That's when the book came back for a new audience. 36. 37. I need to get these in shot, so I'm just going to pause there and pull the camera back out a little bit. Make sure you saw all these. So that was 37, 36, 35 and 34. Oh, this is number 38. That one there. That was the 50th anniversary of Blue Peter. 39, which was for 2010. And the very last annual they did was this one, which was the 2011 one. That was the 40th annual that was ever published for Blue Peter. And that was also the very last annual. So that's those. Now we've just got a couple more bits to look at which warrant it. So on the 50th anniversary came this book, which was Blue Peter. Well, Blue Peter, the 50th anniversary. And this book is fantastic. It comes highly, highly recommended. Richard Marsden worked on the show. He worked in BBC TV Centre on a lot of things. A very knowledgeable chap on the BBC, and it makes a really, really great read. And it's full of interesting trivia, behind the scenes photos, sections on memorabilia. It's just great. I think you'll, if you've got any sort of interest in the show at all, this is definitely a book to get. I particularly like the the little signed postcards or signed photographs for each of the presenters. Great stuff. Goes through all the different eras of it. Now, this is interesting. So the Blue Peter badge. So we'll see in a minute that there's another book that was published by Alex Legar, and I helped promote that one when I was working for a national book chain when the book was published, and I was able to help with the distribution of it in the different stores. And Alex actually gave me a little bag, and it had 4 or 5 different Blue Peter badges in there. Alas, I've not been able to find it because I wanted to show them with this video, but I have got them tucked away somewhere nice and safe. These were Yvette Fielding, Mark Curry. There we are, it's Mark Curry. Don't remember him. Michael Sundin. So yeah, really nice. This is Janet Ellis there, and it's good to have these signed pictures. Peter Duncan, and what was the name of that presenter who I couldn't remember his name? Sarah Green. What was he called? Sarah Green. Late 70s. Oh, maybe they've not done that, which should be Tina Heath. It was around that time, wasn't it? Christopher Wenner. That was the chap we couldn't remember. Yeah, I don't think he could have been in the role as a presenter very long. But as I said, really, really nice book. And it's well worth you trying to track down a copy of this because it was a sellout. I was actually in the book trade at the time, and this book was a real sellout. So I'm not sure, you might need to go onto the old second-hand market to find a nice copy of this now. But it comes, look, that's a great photo, isn't it? But it does come recommended. And then we've got just one more book to look at. So that's this one, the 50th anniversary. And I said just one more book to look at, and that's this one. This is the Blue Peter Behind the Badge book, and this one's by Alex Legar, and he was one of the associate and executive producers of Blue Peter for many, many years. I mean, over 20 years. And when he retired from the BBC, he wrote his memoirs, and his Blue Peter memoirs, I should say. There he is. And when I was running a shop in Exeter, we helped launch the book actually in my bookshop in Exeter, and managed to get it all around the country. He wrote a very nice little dedication as well to me, which is to Jules, to whom I owe a great debt. Very many thanks for all your help with this book. Best wishes, Alex Legar. That was December 2012. And as I said, although it's not perhaps as fact-filled as the 50th anniversary, this has got some real interesting stories behind the scenes of because Alex went away, he did all the special assignments overseas, and was an absolutely integral part of the program, and his views are absolutely fantastic. And once again, if you can find a copy of this book, because it's quite scarce these days, it's well worth tracking down. So there we are. So that's a look at all my Blue Peter books. I hope you have enjoyed this. If you have, please give the video a thumbs up. Do consider subscribing for regular vintage and retro TV content. I've got loads more of this sort of thing to cover, and if you have enjoyed it, do please hit that subscribe button. So there we are for today. Thank you very much for watching, and I shall look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye.